Good morning or afternoon. It's lovely to be presenting at the AMPS conference. My name is Dr. Laura Moriarty, and my presentation is called Co-Designing Graduates. I'm course director for BA Product Design and MA 3D Design within Leeds School of Arts at Leeds Beckett University, where I'm also the Employability Strategic Lead as well across the school. And my presentation today focuses on how a higher education experience can be optimized to align most effectively with the product design industry. So this is about employability within the context of co-designing with our students and graduates. So to start, as an introduction really, I'm in a unique position, I suppose, as a course director, in that I can shape the curriculum, I'm planning sessions, I'm planning the timetable, and I'm able to very much kind of weave activities to do with my academic research into the teaching sessions in lots of different ways. And this has provided a lot of opportunities to co-design with students and also particularly activities such as our course conference, which we hold every year, which is all about employability, to be able to optimize, I suppose, the insights that we can gather together by co-designing together at those various points. So being able to co-design with students, with graduates, working with industry as well, some of our industrial partners, with academic teams and with our careers team as well. So our careers consultants who work across the university but work with our school as well. So bringing all of those different people together um, as the stakeholders in research project and being able to kind of gain insights and to gain insights from those different perspectives as well has been really valuable. So part of that start of the project was about identifying those stakeholders um, and then very much thinking about the curriculum as, and this is working with some of our students, this is a live session where we're brainstorming ideas, really thinking about, as we are product designers together in a room, together in our studio, um, designing the curriculum from the point of view of product design methods, which has been a really interesting concept. So when we think about designing a product, there's very much processes in place, design thinking. We have our design process where we'll work through a very iterative process of learning through doing and potentially making mistakes and jumping back a few steps in order to rectify those and to kind of think about testing in order to understand what works and what doesn't work. You know, so that's in terms of a physical product. And it's been interesting to apply that to, okay, you know, if we think about employability, if we think about our students and our graduates, how can we bring some of those methods into that process? And what happened quite immediately was this idea of process becoming not something that we do on our own, but something that we do together. You know, so the more I worked with stakeholders, and very quickly actually in the process it became we rather than designing individually. And so co-design became, you know, very prominently became a method to use within this idea of how do we optimize students' employability together. Um, and so you can see here, this is the process of design thinking. We have this what feels quite linear set of steps, but actually you can see from the arrows that you can go back at any moment, really, in this process. So we start with empathizing with our user group to define what the issue is. What are we going to be designing for? And from that comes ideation. So lots of brainstorming, lots of ideas in order to prototype. So a lot of what we would do as product designers is to make physical things or digital things in order to be able to test something. And then that's the next stage there is testing. And then from that testing process to be able to implement something. But you can see that these arrows will jump, um, backwards as we're doing things as well. If implementation can sometimes result in needing to go all the way back to the empathize stage because we realize that something needs to change. But we work through these stages essentially of understanding the problem, exploring the solutions, and then materializing what those solutions could be in order to be able to move forward. And so that's what that looks like as a process. When that plays out in the studio, and this is the brainstorming um, process here, this is about working together in groups and applying those design methods, and thinking about how we might design and make together, and how we might look at that sort of how we would take from brainstorming how we would get to ideation. And so lots of sessions have taken place within this project essentially to understand from all the different perspectives. So this was a session with industry, with current students, with some graduates, with again with careers consultants, and we were very much kind of looking at ideas about expectations as well around employability. It can be quite different. I realised quite quickly the, the perspective of students and their expectations of getting a job when they graduate can be quite different to industry in terms of maybe timescales, in terms of um, the amount of input that industry might be able to give, the amount of advice and support and things like that when they're already very busy as well. So it was really good to get everybody in the same room and on the same page, and it really did iron out a lot of those expectations. And from there, from those initial conversations, and I think conversations are really powerful in that way, we went forward to making. And the task in this case was to say to students, what do you think would help with your employability as a student? And this could be at any stage of the course. We wanted to think about right from first year, all the way through to third year, at different points of the course, what could that mean in terms of what you need? Um, and students quite quickly, which was interesting, went towards digital, and there was the vast majority of responses in the room were about designing for an app or designing something that was a digital tool. Um, and that became something that we picked up and ran with. That it wasn't something that I wanted um, to shape at all. I didn't. I tried to not have any kind of bias towards whether this solution was digital or physical, but um, it was important that they thought about it being something that could help them with their employability on an individual basis, but also something that could be used within teaching as well. So a teaching resource as well. So this particular idea was based on the Tinder app, so the dating app, which was quite interesting. This idea of swiping left or right to say whether you're interested in the job that is being presented to you. And there's all sorts of details that you see about the job description and that kind of, I suppose, a bit like dating apps where it's kind of matching up, you with the job, essentially. Have you got the sort of attributes, the kind of, is the job right for you, essentially? you know. So um, so students were exploring really through, and this mobile phone frame slides along. When we're looking at kind of app development, we'll very often have a paper version with a slider that kind of shows you the different screens. So at the same time as those very primary insights, I was also gathering a lot of secondary insights as well into the design industry. It's a very buoyant industry, but there are skills gaps, and the skills shortages tend to be when you gather this kind of secondary evidence, it tends to be around soft skills and confidence. Um, and the kind of personal attributes rather than so much about design skills, which industry will often say, well, we can teach the software, if you've got the aptitude to be able to do that. Um, that tended to be the difference really, as students were very much asking for, well, we want digital skills and we want skills that will allow us to go into a design studio and pick up a project and be able to work with it. Whereas industry was saying absolutely all about the soft skills. That's what they found important. Um, and you can see that really in the sorts of brainstorms that students were producing. You can see these very tangible things, that they wanted opportunities. They wanted those things almost delivered to them on their phone, and to be able to say, okay, this new opportunity has popped up. I'm going to apply for that. I've got a notification to tell me that. There's interview prep support. There's skill support with skills, and links to online learning were really important to them as well. And these are the sorts of mapping out that the students were doing, drawing out what the screens would look like, um, how we might experience applying for a job. So it was very tangible about applying for a job, whereas industry were much more seeing it as a personal journey of development in terms of employability. But this led on to a structure, which you can see on the table there, where students and industry are gathered around together with careers consultants, looking at this initial kind of app structure, thinking about the different areas of the structure. Um, and it's very much a case of wanting this thing to feel very alive to the students, to have this resource. And I think digital does that really well, in that you can have something that is very immediate and can help on a daily basis and gradually over time the student to develop their employability. So it's seen as a process, not as an outcome. We're not sort of seeing employability as a thing that you reach the top of the hill and you put the flag in the top of the mountain or whatever. It's much more about this process that is you're always evolving, you're always developing, um, and and so we were able to map that. We were able to look at that in terms of working with app developers, which was a really interesting addition to the process, being able to talk about flows, talk about the way that app developers will um, have workflows that they can kind of show, well, this is what happens when you go through the different stages of the app, and this is what each person would see. So at this stage, it gets fairly complicated in terms of structure and color coded to kind of show what each type of user would see, because the app was really intended um, for students to be able to use directly on their phone, but also for academic teams to be able to use in the studio as a teaching tool as well. So working with students, guiding them through something, saying, right now, in your self-directed time, take this away and do XYZ for the next session, so all sorts of prep that can be done as well outside of the sessions, which was another real benefit to a digital tool as well. So it's called the Design Graduate, and in true, I guess, product design style at the moment, it is kind of in pieces, really. It's been pulled apart in order to iterate, I guess, and to be able to put back together again. So at the moment, it's not something that is ready to use. It's much more of it's a testing tool, which has informed a lot of what we can then do um, in terms of app development as well. But it's been really interesting to look at lots of secondary sources. This is the UAL, so University of the Arts London Creative Graduate Attributes. And what's interesting about that is very much this idea of the soft skills coming through. There's all sorts um, that you wouldn't say is necessarily a direct hard skill for industry. So storytelling, proactivity, communication, connectivity, enterprise, curiosity, all of these things are really providing that basis of soft skills development in lots of different ways. And it's been interesting to delve into capitals as well. So thinking about Tomlinson's capitals has been really interesting. This idea that students bring with them um, different capitals, in terms of financial, social, the knowledge that they've gained previous to joining the course. Everyone is starting from a different start point. And it's been really interesting. And I think something that I didn't really necessarily imagine would happen from the project, that we'd end up talking about how you level that playing field and how this has ended up being also about well-being, and it's ended up being about mental health as well in terms of employability, which completely taps into confidence and mental well-being in that way. And so I think that that was an area that is now expanding in my research based upon those findings of co-designing together. Um, so we see the app very much as a kind of digital safe space. There are different sections on the app. There's one for industry that's very much about skills development. There's also soft skills development. Um, there's a personal tracker, which is really about measuring and understanding where you are in the bigger map of development. And there's a section for the course team as well. So within a course, you can very much tap into that as an academic as well, and see elements of students' profiles that they want to share and make public with you in order to be able to have those conversations that are more pastoral quite often, in terms of tapping into the sort of support that students might need um, based upon their employability development. But all in all, to finish, really, I've learnt from this that it is about creating the conditions for employability to grow and to flourish. And the app helps to do that in terms of those sections that it addresses. Um, but essentially, it's about being able to, I think the important thing has been pairing up students, graduates, industry, um, careers teams, academics all together, having those conversations all together has really helped us to, like I mentioned earlier, to be on the same page, but to go forward as well together in shaping each student's individual employability. Thank you.